Welcome, dear friend, to this quiet space, a sanctuary carved from the twilight hours, a haven from the bustling day. Let the darkness around you be a comforting blanket, warm and secure. Allow my voice to be a gentle guide, a soft current to carry you back, far back, into the hushed whispers of a time long since past. Tonight, we are not seeking the clamor of grand battles, nor the resonant pronouncements of emperors etched in stone. Instead, we seek the quiet, unassuming company of something small, something profoundly humble, yet a steadfast, silent witness to the myriad currents of life. Imagine, if you will, a world illuminated not by the unwavering, sterile glow of electricity, but by the tender, living dance of a tiny flame. A world where shadows stretched long and deep, playing across walls and faces, and the coming of night brought with it a profound, enveloping stillness, broken only by the softest sounds of life cocooned within ancient walls. Our companion on this journey into slumber is one such flame-bearer, a simple Roman oil lamp, not one of lavish gold or intricately chased bronze destined for a senator's table, but of humble terracotta, shaped by knowing, patient hands, and destined to watch silently as the rich tapestry of human existence unfolded around it. Let us give it a name, a gentle identifier for our story. Let us call it Lucerna, a small light, a tiny spark in a vast and often overwhelming world. Lucerna's story begins not in a place of grandeur, but in the earthy, sun-drenched reality of a potter's workshop. Picture it, perhaps nestled on the bustling, dusty fringes of Rome itself, where the city's insatiable needs were met by countless artisans. Or maybe it was in a smaller provincial town, its rhythms dictated by the slow turning of the seasons and the timeless needs of its people. Feel the palpable warmth of that place, the air thick, almost sweet with the scent of damp earth, of clay recently drawn from the riverbank, the rhythmic, hypnotic whir of the potter's wheel, a constant, soothing lullaby in the background of daily life. The clay that would become Lucerna was dug from the earth, cool and yielding to the touch, holding the memory of millennia within its particles. It was slapped onto the spinning wheel, a formless lump of potential, and then, under the steady, guiding pressure of skilled hands perhaps calloused from years of this work, stained with the earth's ruddy blush, hands that understood the language of clay, it began to take form. A shallow, open bowl designed to cradle the precious oil, a gently curving spout, a delicate channel for the wick that would drink the fuel and offer the flame. A small, unassuming handle, perfectly shaped for a thumb and forefinger to grasp securely. No grand design, no elaborate flourishes, just honest, timeless function. It was one of many, perhaps, lined up like patient soldiers on rough wooden shelves, waiting for the next stage of its transformation. Then came the trial by fire. Not the gentle, nurturing flame it would later cradle, but the roaring, transformative heat of the kiln. For days and nights, Lucerna, along with its brethren, baked in the inferno, the intense heat purging impurities, the clay particles fusing, transforming, hardening, becoming resilient. When it finally emerged, it was irrevocably changed, no longer soft, pliable earth, but a vessel, strong and ready for its purpose. Its color, a warm, earthy red, like the soil from which it came, perhaps with subtle variations where the flames had kissed it most intensely. Its first scent, after the purifying fire might have been the clean, dry, slightly acrid smell of the cooling kiln, or the bustling, multi-layered aroma of the marketplace stall where it was eventually sold, the scent of spices, textiles, and humanity. Or perhaps the cool, still dampness of a merchant storage room awaiting its destiny. It waited, a small, empty promise of light in a world that so often knew darkness. Let us imagine Lucerna's first true home. Not a sprawling, marble-floored villa with mosaic courtyards, but a modest apartment, perhaps high up in one of Rome's towering insulae, those crowded, teetering, vibrant tenements that housed the city's beating heart, its ordinary citizens. Picture a small room, or perhaps two, shared by a family, a craftsman, a cobbler, a weaver, his wife, their children, a bustling microcosm of life. The first time Lucerna was filled, it would have been with olive oil, the golden lifeblood of the Mediterranean world. Not the finest, first-pressed, perfumed oil reserved for the wealthy, perhaps, but good, honest, everyday fuel, its scent clean and slightly fruity. A simple wick, likely fashioned from a twist of flax or a sliver of dried reed, was carefully threaded through its narrow spout, its tip lovingly dipped in the oil to prime it for burning. And then the spark. A piece of flint struck sharply against steel, showering tiny fleeting stars into the dimness. Or perhaps a glowing ember was carefully carried from a neighbor's hearth or the communal cooking fire and touched to the oil-soaked wick. The wick catches, sputters for a hesitant moment, a tiny plume of smoke rising, and then a small, steady flame blossoms. Lucerna is alive, fulfilling its destiny. Its light is soft, a gentle golden glow that pushes back the encroaching darkness of the evening. It doesn't banish the shadows entirely, but rather dances with them, creating a small, intimate circle of warmth and visibility. Within this circle, life unfolds in its most essential forms. By Lucerna's tender light, a mother, her face softened by the glow, mends a worn tunic, her needle flashing rhythmically, a small, repetitive sound of care. A father, his day's hard labor at the docks or in the forum now done, perhaps carves a small wooden horse or doll for his child, the shavings falling like soft snow on the packed earth or simple tile floor. His brow is furrowed in concentration, a quiet act of love. Children, their eyes wide and luminous in the flickering light, listen to a story, a myth of the gods and goddesses who dwell on Mount Olympus, or a well-loved tale of brave heroes and cunning tricksters, their voices hushed, drawing closer to the storyteller and the lamp's comforting presence. Lucerna sees the simple evening meal laid out, coarse bread, a handful of olives, perhaps some goat cheese or a warm vegetable stew, eaten together from shared bowls. It hears the quiet conversations, the recounting of the day's small events, the shared laughter that bounces softly off the plastered walls, the occasional sigh of weariness that speaks of honest work. It absorbs the ambient warmth of the small room, the comforting closeness of the family unit. It absorbs the unique smells of this home, the burning olive oil, the cooking food, the faint, lingering scent of wood smoke from the brazier, and the very human scent of life being lived. When sleep finally descends on the household, the flame is carefully, gently pinched out between moistened fingers, or a small terracotta lid, a snuffer, is placed over its opening, starving it of air. Lucerna rests in the profound darkness, holding the memory of the day, the echoes of voices and emotions within its earthy, cooling form. It hears the myriad sounds of the sleeping city beyond the thin walls, the creak and groan of the insula buildings settling, the distant bark of a strayed dog, the rhythmic call of the night watchman making his rounds, a reassuring sound in the deep night. Day after day, week after week, Lucerna's existence follows this ancient, comforting rhythm. Lit as dusk gathers like a soft grey bird, extinguished as the first tentative fingers of dawn probe the horizon, it is a silent, steadfast observer of the mundane, the everyday, the very fabric of human life, the small details that history books often overlook. It sees the hurried, sleepy-eyed mornings, the family stirring, preparing for the demands of the new day, the quick, simple breakfast, often eaten standing, the farewells at the doorway, a quick kiss, a muttered blessing. During the daylight hours, while unlit, Lucerna sits patiently on a small carved niche in the wall, or a simple wooden shelf alongside other household necessities, a pottery jug, a few worn wooden spoons. It feels the subtle vibrations of the building as neighbors above and below move about their own lives. It hears the symphony of sounds filtering in from the bustling street below, the sharp cries of vendors hawking their wares, the rumble of iron-shod cartwheels on uneven cobblestones, the incessant, lively chatter of 1,000 lives intersecting and diverging. Perhaps it sees moments of profound, quiet joy. A new baby brought home, swaddled tightly, its tiny, perfect face illuminated for the first time by Lucerna's gentle, welcoming glow. A festival day, like the Parentalia or the Lupercalia, where a little extra oil is afforded, a rare treat, and the flame burns brighter, longer, casting more exuberant shadows, as if sharing in the communal spirit of celebration. Small sweet cakes might be laid out, a cup of watered wine shared. It also bears witness to moments of deep sorrow, the inevitable counterpoint to joy. Illness, when worried faces, etched with anxiety, huddle close around a pallet bed, their features starkly defined in the flickering light. It sees tears fall silently, hears hushed prayers whispered to household gods, the Lares and Penates, whose small, crudely carved statues might share the same shelf, their painted eyes seeming to watch with a similar silent empathy. Lucerna offers its steady, unjudging light in these times of grief and uncertainty, a small, unwavering beacon in the overwhelming darkness of loss or fear. It witnesses the small, everyday dramas, the children's squabbles, quickly flaring like a sudden draft on its flame and just as quickly forgotten in a shared game. The rare but sharp disagreement between husband and wife, their voices rising briefly before falling back into strained whispers, the tension palpable in the small room. It sees reconciliations, too, quiet understandings reached in its soft, forgiving glow, a hand reached out, a shared glance. It learns the complex cadence of human emotion, the subtle ebb and flow of family life, the unspoken language of shared existence. Years pass, etching their passage not just on human faces, but on the objects that serve them. Lucerna, being sturdy terracotta, endures. But families change, grow, shrink, prosper, or face hardship. Circumstances shift like the sands. Perhaps its first family moves to a larger dwelling or to a different city. Or perhaps illness or misfortune strikes and the household is broken. Lucerna, a humble possession, might be left behind in the move or sold for a few precious sestertii in a bustling, chaotic second-hand market. Imagine it now in a completely different setting.
Perhaps it finds its way into the hands of a quiet, introspective scholar, a man with a consuming love for ancient scrolls and the pursuit of knowledge. Now Lucerna's light falls not on mending or children's faces, but on fragile papyrus, illuminating the intricate curves of Greek letters or the stern, elegant lines of Latin prose. It stays lit late into the deepest hours of the night, long after the city outside has fallen silent. The only sounds in this new sanctuary are the soft rustle of the scroll being unrolled or turned, the scholar's quiet, rhythmic breathing, the occasional soft sigh of concentration or discovery. Here the conversations it overhears are of a different nature. Perhaps the scholar reads aloud to himself, his voice a low murmur, discussing points of philosophy with an imagined colleague, reciting lines of Virgil or Ovid, or pondering the complex movements of the stars and planets. The air in this room smells of old papyrus, the slightly metallic scent of ink, the dry dust of accumulated knowledge, and the scholar's thoughtful, focused contemplation. Lucerna becomes a trusted companion to solitary study, a silent, unwavering partner in the timeless pursuit of wisdom. Or, by another twist of fate, Lucerna might find itself in the rough, functional environment of a soldier's barracks, perhaps near the city's defensive walls or in a fort on a distant frontier. The light it casts here is harsher, less forgiving, the shadows it throws starker and more defined. It illuminates coarse woolen blankets neatly folded, the glint of polished armor hanging from a peg, shields leaning against the wall, swords and daggers carefully stowed. It hears the gruff, boisterous talk of campaigns fought and battles won, the boasting of young recruits, the quieter, more somber reminiscences of veterans, the hushed confessions of fear or homesickness spoken only in the dead of night when bravado sleeps. It smells of worn leather, oiled metal, sweat, stale wine, and the communal living of men far from home. It witnesses the rough camaraderie, the endless boredom between duties, the ever-present underlying tension of a soldier's precarious life. It might even, for a period, find itself in a small, humble neighborhood shrine, perhaps dedicated to Vesta, the revered goddess of the hearth, home, and family, or to the ever-watchful Lares, the guardian spirits of the household. Here, its flame is not just for illumination, but is itself a prayer, an offering, a symbol of devotion. It sees hands, worn and humbled, clasped in earnest supplication. It witnesses small offerings of incense, its fragrant smoke curling towards the heavens, or tiny cakes, or a few drops of wine laid before it, and the images of the gods. The atmosphere here is one of reverence, of quiet hope, of a community's shared faith. Through all these diverse changes, these different windows onto Roman life, Lucerna remains fundamentally the same, a simple vessel for light. Its experiences, if we can call them that, deepen. Its silent understanding of the vast spectrum of human life broadens with each new owner, each new environment. It has seen poverty and modest comfort, intense intellectual pursuit, and the stark realities of martial readiness, simple, heartfelt faith, and the endless cycle of daily toil. If Lucerna could somehow share its silent chronicle, what specific, poignant moments would it choose to illuminate for us from its long vigil? Perhaps it would recall with a gentle fondness a young girl, her brow deeply furrowed in concentration, her small tongue poking out from the corner of her mouth in an unconscious gesture of effort, as she painstakingly traces her first letters on a reusable wax tablet by its steady light. It would remember the immense, quiet pride in her father's eyes as he watches her, his calloused hand resting gently on her shoulder. The future learning to right itself by lamplight. It might conjure the image of two young lovers meeting secretly in a secluded alcove, the city's noise a distant murmur. Their faces are close, their features softened and made beautiful by Lucerna's glow, their shadows merging and dancing on the wall behind them as if with a life of their own. Their hands find each other in the small, intimate pool of light Lucerna provides, a silent acknowledgement of a forbidden or fledgling affection. The air around them feels electric with unspoken words, with hope and trepidation. It certainly would remember, with a somber clarity, the long, anxious vigil beside a sickbed. The endless, dragging hours of the night, punctuated only by the shallow, labored breathing of the patient. The caregiver's weary, devoted face pale and drawn, illuminated softly by Lucerna's unwavering flame, a small, constant beacon of hope and steadfast endurance in the face of suffering. The only sounds in the oppressive stillness are the patient's rasping breath, a whispered prayer, and the gentle, almost imperceptible hiss of Lucerna's own flame consuming its oil.
It would remember the rare and precious days of festival, Saturnalia, perhaps, when social norms were briefly overturned, and even the humblest homes felt a spark of unbridled joy and release. The air rich with the smell of special foods being prepared, roasted meats, honeyed cakes. The sound of laughter a little louder, a little less restrained than usual. The flame of Lucerna itself burning a little brighter, a little longer, as if it too were sharing in the communal celebration, its light dancing on smiling faces. And, inevitably, it would remember fear. The terrifying night the Great Fire, that recurring nightmare of ancient cities, broke out in a nearby quarter. The acrid, choking smell of smoke growing stronger with each passing moment, insinuating itself through every crack and crevice. The confused, panicked shouts echoing in the narrow street below. The ominous, flickering red glow in the night sky, visible even through the small, unglazed window of its room. The hurried, desperate packing of meager, essential belongings. Lucerna itself almost forgotten in the chaos, then snatched up at the last possible moment by a trembling hand, its little flame guttering and threatening to extinguish as its owner fled into the pandemonium of the streets. A tiny point of familiar light in a world suddenly turned terrifying and unpredictable. These are not the grand, sweeping events that fill the annals of history, but the small, intensely personal, deeply human moments that truly make up a life. And Lucerna was there, a silent, steady, unblinking presence through them all. Time, the great sculptor, leaves its mark not only on flesh and stone, but even on humble fired clay. Lucerna, after many, many years, perhaps even decades, of faithful, unwavering service, begins to show the inevitable signs of its age. A small chip on its rim, the result of being knocked accidentally from a shelf during a hasty cleaning. A dark, indelible stain of soot and carbonized oil around the spout, a testament to countless hours of burning, countless drops of spilled oil. Its surface, once relatively smooth from the potter's hand, is now worn and slightly roughened, bearing the subtle patina of countless hands that have held it, filled it, trimmed its wick, and lit its flame. Perhaps newer, more fashionable lamps become available in the markets, lamps with multiple spouts for a brighter light, lamps crafted from more expensive bronze, or lamps adorned with more elaborate relief decorations depicting gods, goddesses, or scenes from mythology. Lucerna, simple, plain, and now visibly old, might be relegated to a less important room, a storage space, or used only as a backup when other newer lamps are unavailable or their oil has run dry. Its flame, when lit, still burns, but perhaps a little more fitfully now, requiring more frequent tending of the wick. But it still gives its light, faithfully, stubbornly, until the very end of its useful life. One day, it is simply not lit. Perhaps it develops a crack that leaks oil, rendering it unsafe or unusable. Perhaps its last owner passes away, and those who remain have no sentimental attachment or practical use for such an old, plain lamp. It is stored away in a dark, dusty corner, among other forgotten, discarded things, a broken tool, a worn-out sandal, a chipped pot. Or maybe, more unceremoniously, it is discarded, tossed onto a growing rubbish heap outside the city walls, its purpose fulfilled, its long service ended. There it lies in the darkness, the true, unyielding darkness this time, no longer a harbinger of its own comforting light. It begins its slow return to the earth from which it came, gradually being covered by layers of dust, by household debris, by the relentless, indifferent passage of years, then decades, then centuries. The vibrant, teeming city it knew so intimately crumbles around it, changes its shape, is built over by successive generations. New languages are spoken on its ancient streets, new gods are worshipped in new temples. Entirely new ways of life emerge and fade. Lucerna sleeps, its myriad stories, its silent observations held deep within its silent, perhaps broken terracotta form. Centuries upon centuries pass. Great empires rise to unimaginable heights and then fall into ruin and memory. The world Lucerna knew transformed beyond any possible recognition. Forests grow where cities once stood, and new cities rise on forgotten plains. Then, one ordinary day, perhaps 2,000 years later, a trowel, wielded by an archaeologist, or a shovel, turning the earth for a new construction, strikes something small and hard in the soil. Careful hands, intrigued by the resistance, begin to brush away the accumulated earth, the compacted dust of ages. And there it is. Lucerna. Broken, perhaps, missing a fragment, encrusted with the soil of millennia, but unmistakably what it once was. A small, humble, terracotta Roman oil lamp. To the archaeologist who uncovers it, it is an artifact, a tangible piece of evidence, a clue to the daily life, the domestic routines, the technological level of a long-lost civilization. It is carefully cleaned, measured, photographed, catalogued, perhaps analyzed for its clay composition. It might eventually find its way into the climate-controlled environment of a museum display case, labeled with its provenance and estimated date. It is admired by visitors for its simplicity, its antiquity, its survival. But for us tonight, as we lie on the cusp of sleep, it is more than just an artifact. It is Lucerna, the little lamp that watched Rome. It is a vessel, not just of ancient olive oil, but of condensed time, of unseen moments, of the quiet, persistent, enduring flame of human existence. It is a tangible link to individual lives, lived with the same hopes, fears, joys, and sorrows that we know today. As we prepare now for our own rest, as the day's thoughts begin to soften and recede, let us think for a moment of Lucerna and of all the countless other silent, unassuming witnesses that surround us, even now in our own homes. The old wooden chair in the corner that has held generations of our family, the worn, beloved book on the nightstand, its pages filled with stories that have transported us, the simple ceramic cup that has shared countless morning conversations, countless moments of quiet reflection. They too have their stories, their accumulated memories, their quiet whispers from the walls of our own lives. They connect us, in a subtle but profound way, to those who came before us, and to the enduring, universal human experiences of love, loss, work, creativity, and hope. The little Roman lamp, Lucerna, no longer burns with a physical flame. Its terracotta form is cold and still, but the light that it represents, the light of human life, of daily struggles met with resilience, of simple joys cherished in fleeting moments, that light never truly goes out. It is passed on in objects, in stories, in traditions, in the very fabric of our shared, continuous human history. Allow yourself now to drift, to float on the gentle, soothing current of these thoughts. Let the peace of the distant past and the quiet of the present moment envelop you like the softest embrace. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to see, nothing more to ponder. Only rest, only quiet, only the soft, enduring glow of memory and the promise of dreams. Good night. Sleep well.
Welcome. Allow yourself to settle, to release the day. Tonight, we journey to the fertile black land Kemet, the gift of the Nile. We won't walk in the golden sandals of Pharaoh, nor decipher the grand pronouncements of high priests. Instead, we seek the quieter path, the life of one who toiled in the Pharaoh's shadow, an essential cog in the vast machinery of ancient Egypt. We will spend a night with a scribe, a keeper of records, a guardian of order. Let the ancient air soothe you, and the rhythms of the Nile guide you to rest. Imagine the first pale light of dawn touching the eastern desert cliffs, casting long shadows across the vibrant green fields that flank the majestic Nile. We are in Waset, the city you might know as Thebes, during a time of stability, perhaps the New Kingdom. In a modest mud brick house, not far from the sprawling temple complex of Karnak, a man named Pentu stirs. He is a scribe, but not one whose name will be carved on colossal statues. He is perhaps an overseer of temple granaries or a clerk in the vizier's office. His home is simple but comfortable, a few rooms around a small courtyard. The air is already warm, carrying the scent of baking bread from a neighbor's oven, the distant braying of a donkey, and the ever-present life-giving aroma of the river. He rises, performs his morning ablutions with water drawn from a nearby well or canal. His wife is already awake, tending to the small tasks of the household. There is a quiet routine to their lives, a rhythm dictated by the sun and the sacred duties of the land. After a simple breakfast, perhaps some bread, dates, a little beer, which is more of a nutritious drink than an intoxicant, Pentu prepares for his day. He wears a clean linen kilt, simple and practical. In his hand, he carries his scribe's palette, a rectangular piece of wood with wells for black and red ink, and a slot for his reed brushes. This is the emblem of his profession, his key to a life of relative comfort and respect, above the toil of the fields. He walks through the awakening city. The streets are already filling with people, farmers heading to their fields, craftsmen opening their workshops, priests making their way to the temples. The sounds are a symphony of daily life, chatter in the Egyptian tongue, the cries of vendors, the hammering from a carpenter's shop. Pentu's destination is likely a section of a vast temple complex or an administrative building. Imagine him passing beneath towering pylons, through courtyards where sunlight streams down, casting sharp shadows. He is a small figure in this monumental landscape, yet his role is vital. Pentu arrives at his designated office, perhaps a small chamber within the temple walls, or a shared room with other scribes. He sits, likely cross-legged, before a low wooden desk, or perhaps unrolls his papyrus on his lap. His task for the day begins. He might be tallying sacks of grain brought as offerings or taxes to the temple granaries. Each sack counted, its origin noted, its quality assessed. Or perhaps he is drafting letters for a superior, recording legal proceedings, or copying religious texts. The work is meticulous, demanding intense concentration. Accuracy is paramount. An error in the accounts could mean disaster for supplies, or worse, accusations of corruption or incompetence. Things that could bring swift punishment in a society that valued ma'at, order and justice. Above all, imagine the feel of the papyrus, smooth on one side, slightly rougher on the other. The reed brush, its tip carefully chewed to the right fineness, dipped into the black ink made from soot and gum, or the red ink from ochre, used for headings or important figures. He writes in hieratic, the cursive script used for everyday administration, a faster, more flowing version of the hieroglyphs you see on tomb walls. Each symbol is precise, practiced. His hand moves steadily across the sheet. His day is not spent in complete isolation. Other scribes work nearby, a quiet camaraderie existing between them. Messengers come and go, bringing documents from other departments or instructions from higher officials. Perhaps a foreman of field workers comes to report on the harvest, his voice rougher, his skin darker from the sun, a contrast to Pentu's paler complexion from working indoors. Pentu listens, records, calculates. He is a conduit of information, a keeper of the state's memory. He sees the lists of supplies needed for a festival, the records of rations for the workers building a new shrine, the accounts of expeditions to the turquoise mines in the Sinai. He doesn't command these expeditions, nor does he carve the statues, but his careful records ensure these grand undertakings can proceed. He is part of the intricate web that holds the kingdom together. He might pause for a midday meal, simple fare brought from home, or provided by the temple. During this break, he might observe the grand processions, the rituals performed by priests in their leopard skins, the sheer scale of the devotion and power that surrounds him. He is close to it, yet distinct. There are pressures, deadlines to meet, quotas to be filled, the watchful eyes of superiors, the fear of making a mistake that could have serious repercussions. The heat of the afternoon can be stifling, making concentration difficult. But there are also satisfactions, a perfectly balanced account, a neatly written document, clear and unambiguous. The knowledge that his work contributes to the smooth running of the temple, of the state itself. He is educated, literate, in a world where most are not. This grants him status, a degree of security. He understands the systems, the laws, the traditions. He is not a hero in the grand tales, but he is a guardian of the everyday order that allows those grand tales to unfold. He ensures the offerings are made, the workers are fed, the pharaoh's decrees are recorded and disseminated. His work is the quiet foundation upon which the more visible glories of Egypt are built. As the sun begins to dip towards the western horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and reds, Pentu carefully finishes his tasks. He checks his figures one last time, rolls up his papyri, and cleans his palette. The day's work is done. He walks home, perhaps a little weary, but with the quiet satisfaction of duties fulfilled. The evening air is cooler now. The sounds of the city are softer, more subdued. Families are gathering. The smell of cooking fires is more pronounced. He reaches his home, greets his wife, perhaps his children if he has them. The conversation might turn to mundane matters, the price of fish in the market, news from a relative, plans for a local festival. Here, in the privacy of his home, he is not just a scribe, but a husband, a father, a man. He is part of the timeless rhythm of Egyptian family life. Later, as the oil lamps cast a soft glow within the house, Pentu might reflect on his day. He is a small part of a vast, ancient, and enduring civilization. He serves the gods. He serves Pharaoh. He serves Ma'at by ensuring that the granaries are full, the records are true, and order is maintained. His name may not be remembered by posterity, but his contribution, like that of countless others like him, is woven into the very fabric of Egypt. Let the peace of the Egyptian night settle over you. The Nile flows on, as it has for millennia. The stars shine brightly in the desert sky. Pentu, and all the other quiet officials of his time, have earned their rest. There are no more tallies to check, no more reports to write for today. Only the deep, restorative embrace of sleep. Allow yourself to drift down, like a boat on the gentle current of the Nile, into a peaceful, profound sleep. Sleep now. Sleep.
Welcome, dear seeker of quietude, to this peaceful haven where the noise of the present day fades into a soft murmur. Let the darkness be a comforting cloak, and allow my voice to be a gentle stream, carrying you towards the shores of slumber. Tonight, we journey not to grand events, but into the minds of those who came before us, to explore the delicate, intricate tapestries of belief they wove to understand themselves and the world around them. We are delving into the echoes of old beliefs, those ideas that once held sway, shaping lives and perceptions, now resting quietly in the annals of history. Our exploration is not one of judgment, but of gentle curiosity, seeking to understand how these beliefs arose and what they tell us about the enduring human quest for meaning. Tonight, we consider a profound idea that governed the understanding of health, emotion, and personality for over 2 millennia, the theory of the 4 humors. Imagine the human body not as a complex machine of cells and systems as we know it today, but as a kind of inner garden, a delicate ecosystem where balance is key. This was the essence of humoral theory, a framework that saw our very beings as intertwined with the fundamental elements of the cosmos. At the heart of this ancient belief system were 4 primary substances, or humors, believed to circulate within the body. These were not just abstract concepts, but were thought to be actual, tangible fluids, each with its own distinct nature and qualities. First, there was blood, associated with the element of air, the season of spring, and the qualities of being hot and moist. Blood was seen as the vital essence, bringing warmth, energy, and a cheerful disposition. Think of the vibrant life of springtime, the gentle warmth of a spring breeze. Next came phlegm. This humor was linked to the element of water, the season of winter, and the qualities of being cold and moist. Phlegm was thought to be responsible for coolness, calmness, and a more reserved, perhaps even sluggish nature. Imagine the stillness of a deep pool of water, the quiet chill of a winter's day. Then there was yellow bile, sometimes called choler. This was associated with the element of fire, the season of summer, and the qualities of being hot and dry. Yellow bile was believed to fuel passion, ambition, and a fiery, energetic, sometimes irritable temperament. Picture the intense heat of a summer sun, the crackling energy of a fire. And finally, black bile, or melancholy. This humor was connected to the element of earth, the season of autumn, and the qualities of being cold and dry. Black bile was thought to foster introspection, seriousness, and a tendency towards sadness or contemplation. Think of the dry, fallen leaves of autumn, the quiet solitude of the earth. These four humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, were not seen as separate and static, but in a constant, dynamic interplay. A healthy person was one in whom these four essences were in perfect balance, each present in its correct proportion, like a well-tended garden where all plants receive the right amount of sun and water. It might seem strange to us now, this idea of our bodies being governed by these four fluids. But for centuries, it was the cornerstone of medical understanding, accepted by the greatest minds from ancient Greece, through the Roman Empire, the Islamic Golden Age, and well into the European Renaissance and beyond. Why did this theory hold such power for so long? Part of its appeal lay in its elegant symmetry and its comprehensiveness. It connected the microcosm of the human body to the macrocosm of the universe. The four humors mirrored the four elements: earth, air, fire, water, the four seasons, the four primary qualities: hot, cold, moist, dry. This created a satisfying, holistic view of existence, where humanity was not separate from nature, but an integral part of its grand design. Observation also played a role, albeit interpreted through the lens of the theory. When people were ill, they often produced visible changes in their bodily fluids. A fever might bring flushed skin, excess heat, perhaps too much blood or yellow bile. A cold would produce excess mucus, phlegm. Vomiting might expel yellowish fluid bile. These were seen as direct evidence of humoral imbalance. If someone was lethargic, they were phlegmatic. If quick to anger, they were choleric. If cheerful and optimistic, sanguine, from sanguis, Latin for blood. If prone to sadness, melancholic. The authority of ancient thinkers like Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, and later Galen, a Roman physician whose writings dominated Western medicine for over 1,300 years, cemented these ideas. Their detailed observations and elaborate theories, all built upon the foundation of the four humors, were studied and revered, making it difficult for alternative ideas to take root for a very long time. It was a complete system, offering explanations and, crucially, suggesting treatments. This belief in the four humors wasn't just an abstract medical theory. It profoundly shaped daily life, diet, and how people understood their own bodies and emotions. Diet and lifestyle. Food and drink were categorized by their humoral qualities. Some foods were considered heating, like spices or red meat. Others cooling, like cucumbers or melons. Some were moistening, others drying. A physician, or even a knowledgeable layperson, would advise a diet to counteract a perceived humoral imbalance. If you were considered too melancholic, an excess of cold, dry black bile, you might be advised to eat warming, moistening foods, and to engage in cheerful company. If too choleric, excess hot, dry yellow bile, cooling and calming foods and activities would be prescribed. Even the air you breathed, the amount of sleep you got, the exercise you took, were all considered in terms of maintaining humoral balance. Your environment mattered. Living near a swamp, cold and moist, might be bad for someone already too phlegmatic. Understanding illness. Illness was almost universally seen as a disruption of this delicate internal balance. Too much of one humor or too little of another, or a corruption of one of the humors, was the root cause of disease. The goal of medicine, therefore, was to restore this equilibrium. This could involve trying to draw out an excess humor, for example through bloodletting, to reduce an excess of hot blood, believed to cause fevers or inflammation, or by inducing vomiting or purging to expel excess bile or phlegm. While these treatments seem harsh or even harmful to us today, They were undertaken with the genuine intention of restoring balance and relieving suffering based on the best understanding of the time. They were logical within the humoral framework. Personality and temperament. The humors were also believed to determine a person's fundamental personality and temperament. This is where we get our enduring terms. A sanguine person, excess blood, was cheerful, optimistic, sociable, and ruddy-cheeked. A phlegmatic person, excess phlegm, was calm, quiet, perhaps a little slow or unemotional. A choleric person, excess yellow bile, was fiery, energetic, ambitious, and prone to anger. A melancholic person, excess black bile, was thoughtful, serious, artistic, and prone to sadness or introspection. Most people were thought to be a blend, but one humor often predominated, shaping their character. This wasn't necessarily seen as a flaw, but simply as part of their innate constitution, their given nature, to be understood and managed. Let us try for a moment to step into the mind of someone living in, say, the 14th century. How might they perceive the world through the lens of humoral theory? If a child develops a fever, their skin hot and flushed, their breathing rapid, a parent might anxiously conclude that the child has an excess of blood, or perhaps their blood has become overheated. The prescribed remedy might involve trying to cool the child, perhaps with cool compresses, and feeding them cooling foods, like barley water. A physician might even suggest a very small, careful bloodletting if the fever was severe, to release the supposed excess heat. If a scholar spends long hours in solitary study, becoming pale and withdrawn, perhaps prone to sighing and deep thoughts, he might be described as suffering from an excess of black bile, the melancholic humor. His friends might advise him to seek more cheerful company, to listen to uplifting music, or to take gentle walks in a pleasant garden to rebalance his spirits. His diet might be adjusted to include more warming and moistening foods. A sudden outburst of anger from a normally placid individual might be attributed to a temporary surge of yellow bile, perhaps triggered by certain foods, or the weather, or a stressful event. The advice would be to calm the fire with cooling remedies and a peaceful environment. This framework provided a way to make sense of the unpredictable nature of health and emotion. It offered explanations and a sense of agency, even if the explanations and remedies were, from our modern perspective, misguided. It was a system born of a deep human need to understand and to heal. While some humoral treatments like bloodletting sound alarming, much of the advice was also focused on gentle, natural methods of rebalancing. Herbal remedies were crucial, with plants carefully categorized by their humoral properties, some to cool, some to warm, some to dry, some to moisten. A physician was often a skilled herbalist. The importance of rest, fresh air, and a peaceful environment was also emphasized. Bathing, massage, and listening to music could all be prescribed to soothe agitated humors or invigorate sluggish ones. The connection between mind and body was implicitly understood. A troubled spirit could easily disrupt the body's humoral balance, and vice versa. Think of a medieval monastery garden, meticulously planted not just with vegetables for the table, but with a wide array of medicinal herbs. The monks would have understood these plants in humoral terms, using them to treat the sick within their community and often in the surrounding villages. This was a gentle, observational form of medicine, deeply connected to the natural world. The physician's role was not just to prescribe, but to observe carefully the patient's complexion, the nature of their excretions, their pulse, their reported feelings and dreams. All these were clues to the state of their internal humoral landscape. It was a deeply personalized approach to healing. For nearly 2,000 years, the theory of the four humors reigned supreme. It was elaborated upon, debated, refined, but its core principles remained largely unchallenged. However, Beginning in the Renaissance and accelerating with the scientific revolution, new discoveries began to slowly chip away at its foundations. The invention of the microscope revealed a hidden world of cells and microorganisms, offering new explanations for disease. Detailed anatomical studies, like those of Vesalius in the 16th century, provided a more accurate understanding of the body's structure, challenging some of Galen's long-held assertions. William Harvey's discovery of the circulation of blood in the 17th century fundamentally changed how the cardiovascular system was understood. These new scientific insights didn't overthrow humoral theory overnight. Old beliefs, especially those so deeply ingrained and so widely accepted, fade slowly, like a long twilight. For a time, new ideas existed alongside the old, sometimes integrated, sometimes in conflict. But gradually, the humoral model, which had once seemed so comprehensive and logical, began to appear insufficient to explain the growing body of scientific evidence. By the 19th century, with the rise of germ theory and cellular pathology, the four humors were largely relegated to the realm of historical medical beliefs. Yet, its influence lingers remarkably in our language, in words like sanguine, phlegmatic, choleric, and melancholic, which we still use to describe personalities, echoes of a time when our very essence was thought to flow within us as these four vital fluids. As we drift now toward sleep, let us reflect on this ancient theory not with an air of superiority for what we know now, but with a gentle empathy for those who sought to understand the profound mysteries of life and health with the tools and knowledge available to them. The theory of the four humors, in its time, was a testament to the human desire to find order in complexity, to connect our inner lives with the rhythms of the cosmos. It reminds us that all beliefs are, in a sense, stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world. Some stories endure for millennia, shaping civilizations, while others fade as new narratives emerge. There is a certain comfort in these old beliefs, a sense of connection to the long chain of human thought, the continuous effort to understand who we are. The body as a garden, needing careful tending and balance, is a beautiful metaphor. Even if the specifics of the humors no longer guide our medicine, it speaks to a holistic view, a respect for natural processes, and an understanding of our interconnectedness. Let these gentle echoes of old beliefs soothe your mind. There is no need for complex thought now, only for rest. Allow yourself to drift, to float, knowing that the human quest for understanding continues, even as we sleep. The universe holds its mysteries, and we, in our own ways, continue to seek the balance that brings peace. Good night. May your rest be deep and your inner garden flourish. Welcome, dear friend, to this quiet harbor of the night. Let the day's currents gently carry you to this place of stillness, this sanctuary where we listen for voices from times long past, voices that whisper stories of lives both ordinary and extraordinary. Tonight, we are not opening a grand history book filled with the deeds of kings or the clamor of battles, but rather, we are carefully unfolding a simple piece of paper, a letter, yellowed perhaps with age, carrying the intimate thoughts, the hopes and fears of an ordinary soul from a less trodden, quieter path of history. Imagine a life lived on the very edge of the known world, a life dedicated to a single, unwavering, luminous purpose, to keep a bright light burning against the vast, often unforgiving darkness of the sea. We are about to hear from such a person. This is a letter from a lighthouse keeper, a solitary sentinel, writing from his isolated stone tower in the latter years of the 19th century. Let his words, his reflections, be a gentle lullaby, a whisper from a life of quiet, steadfast duty and profound, elemental connection to the natural world. My dearest Ilara, The Point Lighthouse, Tuesday, the 14th day of October, In the year of our Lord 1888. The lamp is burning steady and true tonight, sister. A good, clean, strong flame, casting its unwavering beam far out onto a sea that's as calm and smooth as a newly polished looking-glass, especially after yesterday's little display of temper. I've just completed my rounds, my final checks for the early part of the night. The great Fresnel lens, that marvel of French engineering, polished to a brilliant shine that would make a royal jeweler nod in approval. Every intricate prism, free of soot or salt spray. The clockwork mechanism for the rotation, a wondrous assembly of gears and weights, has been wound and is now ticking like a great, sleeping, benevolent heart beneath me, deep in the tower's core. It's in these quiet, suspended hours, after the primary work is done and the light itself is performing its silent, ceaseless duty, that my thoughts often and most fondly turn to you, Alara, and to the bustling, warm life beyond these cold, stone walls. The supply tender, the stout Helen, isn't due to make her call for another 3 weeks, and that's only if the weather holds fair and Captain McGregor can navigate the tricky currents around the reef. So this letter, like its predecessors, will have to wait patiently in my small, sea-worn wooden box, alongside the others I've penned since her last visit. But writing it now, in the stillness, picturing your dear face as you might read it, in your warm, familiar kitchen, the kettle singing on the hob, it feels almost like a conversation, a fragile but precious bridge across the miles of restless water and the green, rolling land that separates us. Life here, as you well know from my previous accounts, is governed by immutable rhythms, not the comforting, man-made rhythm of market days or the Sunday church bells that punctuate your weeks in the village, but the more ancient, elemental rhythm of the tides, the twice-daily ebb and flow that reveals and then conceals the jagged teeth of the rocks below, the slow, majestic turning of the light itself, sweeping its arc of warning and welcome, the coming and going of the sun, a daily miracle even here, and of course, the ever-watchful, unblinking eye I must keep on the flame, the very soul of this place. My day, or rather, my working night and day, begins before the first hint of dawn, while the stars still blaze fiercely. I check the lamp after its night-long vigil, noting its consumption of oil, the state of the wicks. Then, as the sun's own glorious light begins to paint the eastern sky with strokes of rose and gold, I extinguish our man-made flame. Then begins the meticulous cleaning, the great Fresnel lens, a magnificent, beehive-like structure of precisely ground glass prisms and bullseyes, demands the most painstaking care. Every speck of dust, every oily smear from the burning lamp, every subtle film of salt carried in by the sea mist can diminish its power, scatter its focused beam, and that's a risk I cannot, will not take. The lives of mariners, men I will never meet, depend on this light being true and piercing. The brass work, too, of which there is a surprising amount, hinges, handles, parts of the lamp mechanism itself, needs constant, vigorous polishing to guard against the insidious salt air that creeps into everything, no matter how well sealed the windows and doors may seem. It's a continuous, quiet fight against rust and the green verdigris of decay, a small, daily battle that, I'm pleased to say, I mostly win. Then there's the winding of the heavy weights for the clockwork mechanism that rotates the lamp, a task that requires a strong arm, a steady back, and a precise count. It's like winding the mainspring of the world itself, ensuring its orderly, predictable turning through the darkest hours of the night. The afternoons, if the weather is fair and the wind not too boisterous, might allow for a brief constitutional around the narrow base of the tower, on the small, wave-battered patch of granite that constitutes my entire kingdom. I inspect the foundations for any new cracks or damage from the sea's relentless assault, look for useful pieces of driftwood washed ashore, or simply stand and watch the gulls. They are my closest, and certainly my loudest neighbors, Ilara. Their raucous cries and endless squabbles have become a familiar sound, an integral part of the unique, wild music of this isolated place. And the sea, the sea, Ilara, is a constant, overwhelming presence, a living entity, never the same from one day to the next, always changing its mood, its color, its voice. Some days, it whispers and sighs against the rocks like a gentle, soothing friend, its surface glittering with a million shattered diamonds under the bright sun. On such days, when the waves are mere ripples and the horizon is clear and sharp, I can almost forget its latent power, its terrifying capacity for sudden, unbridled fury. I see the fishing boats from Port Rellan in the far distance, their patched brown sails like small, hopeful wings against the blue, and I feel a sense of peace, a tenuous connection to the wider world of men and their endeavors. Then there are the other days when the sky lowers, turning the color of old bruised lead, and the wind begins to moan like a lost soul, a mournful dirge that builds and builds around the unyielding stone of the tower. The waves, which only yesterday were playful, skipping lambs, transform into monstrous, charging green and white mountains of water, hurling themselves with unimaginable force against the foundations. The impact sending a tremor right up through the stone to the lantern room where I stand. The sound is like a continuous barrage of cannon fire, a roar that fills the ears and shakes the very bones. Those are the nights, Ilara, when sleep is an impossible dream, a forgotten luxury. I stay by the lamp, my hand often resting on its sturdy pedestal, as if to lend it my own strength, watching, listening, praying that the thick lantern glass holds against the onslaught, that the light, our vital beacon, does not falter or fail. Just last week, we endured such a blow, a full northeasterly gale that raged for 2 days and 3 nights without pause. It was relentless. I barely left the lamp, catching only snatched moments of fitful, anxious sleep in my old wooden chair, my oilskin still damp. The noise was deafening, a constant, overwhelming cacophony of wind and water. The spray, Ilara, driven by the hurricane-force gusts, reached right up to the lantern room itself, more than 100 feet above the normal sea level, coating the thick glass windows in an opaque, crystalline layer of salt, dimming the precious light. Several times each night, I had to venture out onto the narrow, exposed gallery that encircles the lantern, tethered by a stout safety rope, my back to the gale, to scrape and wipe the glass clear, the wind tearing at my clothes, threatening to rip me from my precarious hold, the sea roaring like 1,000 demons in the blackness below. It is not work for the faint-hearted. But the light held. Our foundations, laid by men who understood the sea's fury, held firm. And when the storm finally broke, its rage spent, and the first watery rays of sun pierced through the ragged, fleeing clouds, the relief was profound, indescribable, like a high fever finally breaking, leaving one weak but grateful. The sea, exhausted and subdued, lay panting and sighing, and the entire world felt new-washed, scoured clean, and intensely precious. It is in those moments, Ilara, immediately after the tempest, standing in the sudden, almost shocking quiet, that the profound importance of this solitary, demanding task feels most acute. Knowing that my light, your brother's small, flickering flame against such elemental power, might have been the crucial difference between a safe passage and utter disaster for some unknown, unseen soul out there in the terrifying blackness of the storm. You ask in your last letter, as you often do, if I am lonely. It is a fair and loving question, sister, and the honest answer is, sometimes. There are times, yes, when the solitude presses in with a tangible weight, a heavy cloak, especially on the long, dark winter nights, when the wind howls its most mournful, desolate songs around the tower's cap, and the only human voice to be heard is the one reciting passages from my books, or the one that echoes faintly in my own head, or, more sweetly, the imagined sound of your voice, or Father's, in letters like this one I now composed. I see the ships pass by on the distant horizon, some close enough for me to make out their rigging with my spyglass, to see the smoke plume from their funnels if they are steamers. Others are just a faint, ghostly smudge of sail, or a distant flicker of their own navigation lights. Each one is a small, self-contained world, bustling with lives, stories, hopes, fears, and destinations. They pass on their urgent errands, and I am left here, a fixed point, with my steadfast light. Sometimes I allow myself to wonder about the people on those ships. Where are they bound? From what distant, exotic ports have they sailed? What news, what joys, what sorrows do they carry within their wooden or iron hulls? The arrival of the supply tender, the stout Helen, is therefore always a momentous, almost festive occasion, not just for the replenishment of fresh provisions, the sacks of flour, the barrels of salted meat and fish, the precious casks of oil for the lamp, and, most thankfully, your carefully wrapped letters and perhaps a bundle of month-old newspapers, but for the simple, profound blessing of human contact. To exchange a few words, a jest, a piece of news with Captain McGregor and his two lads, to hear their voices, to see their faces, even for just an hour or two while they unload, it's like a long, cool drink of fresh spring water after weeks of thirst in a parched desert. Then they depart, their boat shrinking against the waves, and the silence they leave behind is, for a little while, noticeably heavier, more profound than before, but it passes. One grows accustomed to the quiet again, finds the familiar rhythm in it, like an old, well-worn coat. I have my books, of course, my silent companions. Not as many as a scholar might boast, for space is a precious commodity in this tower, but those I have are cherished old friends, their pages softened and worn smooth by many readings. My Shakespeare, a battered Burns, a fascinating book of old sea charts, showing coasts I will only ever visit in my imagination, and, naturally, the good book itself. They are good, undemanding company in their own way, and I have my thoughts, my memories. This tower, with its endless horizons and its deep quiet, is a fertile ground for remembering, for reflection. It's not entirely without other forms of life here, you understand. The seabirds, as I've often mentioned, are a constant presence. Gulls, of course, endlessly circling and crying, their audacity sometimes amusing. The elegant, swift-winged terns, diving like arrows for fish. Sometimes a solitary, brooding cormorant, black as night, will perch on an outlying rock, its wings spread wide to dry in the sun, looking like some ancient, feathered herald. In the spring, the puffins arrive, comical little fellows with their brightly colored beaks and serious expressions. Their bustling, nesting activity brings a brief, cheerful chaos to the cliffs below the lighthouse, a welcome flurry of activity. And I've even seen seals on several occasions, their sleek, dark, intelligent heads bobbing in the calmer waters of the western cove, their large, liquid, curious eyes watching me with an unnerving intensity as I, in turn, watch them from the gallery. They seem to understand the fundamental nature of this place, its inherent wildness, its profound solitude. They are creatures of the edge, just as I am. And the light itself, Alara, it almost feels as though it has its own distinct life, its own personality. The way it catches the foaming crest of a breaking wave in the pitch darkness, turning it to brilliant, ephemeral silver for a fleeting, magical moment. The way its powerful beam sweeps relentlessly across the empty, indifferent expanse of water. A searching, hopeful, unwavering finger of light. On truly clear nights, when there is no moon, the stars here are beyond anything you could ever imagine in a town or city, with no competing artificial lights to dim their celestial brilliance. They stretch from one horizon to the other, a vast, silent, glittering, uncountable audience to my solitary nightly watch. Sometimes, in the deep hours, I feel as though this lighthouse is not anchored to the earth at all, but is adrift in that immense, silent sea of stars, with only my lamp to guide our fantastical voyage. The specific pattern of the light, its carefully timed signature, 2 bright flashes every 20 seconds for this particular point. It's a unique voice, a distinct identity, speaking a language understood by mariners from every nation across the globe. To think that this specific pattern, my pattern, is meticulously marked on nautical charts in bustling ports I will never see, in the navigation rooms of ships sailed by men whose faces I will never know, it gives a profound sense of being part of something vast, interconnected, and vitally important, even from this small, isolated, windswept rock. Father would have understood this life, I often think. He possessed that same quiet, unwavering sense of duty, that same deep, almost spiritual respect for the raw power and untamed beauty of nature. I often find my thoughts turning to him when I'm tending the intricate workings of the lamp, especially when the delicate clockwork mechanism needs a subtle adjustment, a careful touch. He taught me so much about patience, about the quiet dignity of taking pride in a job done well, no matter how humble or unseen it might be. Do you remember, Alara, how he used to mend the fishing nets by the fire in winter, his calloused, work-roughened fingers so surprisingly deft and gentle with the fine twine? There's a similar, deep satisfaction in keeping this light burning perfectly, in knowing that its beam is as strong and clear as human ingenuity can make it. I received your news about young Jamie, your dear son, and my heart aches to hear his cough still troubles him so. The city air, thick with coal smoke and industry, is not always kind to young lungs. Please tell him his old uncle Ewan, out here on his rock, sends his deepest love and a brand new story of a brave little fishing boat that lost its way in a sudden fog, but was guided safely back to harbor. All thanks to a tall, friendly lighthouse with a bright, winking eye. Perhaps that will amuse him and lift his spirits. I am enclosing in this letter a small, perfectly smooth piece of green sea glass I found yesterday, tumbled by the relentless waves for who knows how many years, until it has become like a precious, translucent jewel. Maybe it will bring him a little tangible piece of this wild, windswept place, a token from the sea. Time, Ilara, moves in a peculiar fashion here. The individual days can sometimes feel long, especially in the depths of winter, each task repeated with monotonous regularity. Yet, paradoxically, the weeks and months seem to slip by like the outgoing tide, swift and almost unnoticed. Another season turns, marked by the changing patterns of migrating birds or the subtle shift in the sea's temperature. Another year is meticulously marked in my official logbook. I see the changes in my own reflection in the polished lantern glass sometimes when the lamp is unlit, more silver threads in the beard, deeper lines etched around the eyes by sun and wind and worry. But the light itself, the beam that I tend, it remains constant, unwavering, seemingly ageless, there is a profound and abiding comfort in that unchanging truth. My greatest hope, my most fervent prayer, is simple enough: to keep this light burning true and bright for as long as I am granted the strength and acuity to do so. To know, when my time eventually comes, that I have played my small, anonymous part in keeping others safe from harm, in guiding them through the perilous night. It is not a grand ambition, I suppose, not the sort that gets recorded in history books or earns public acclaim, but it is an honest one, a worthy one. And when my watch here is finally done, I hope that another will come, someone who loves the light and the sea, and even the challenging embrace of solitude, as much as I have grown to over these many years. The hour grows late now, even for a night owl like me. The great clockwork ticks steadily on beneath my feet, a faithful, rhythmic heartbeat in the otherwise silent tower. The beam of light sweeps out into the immense darkness, a silent, revolving promise of guidance and safety. I should try to get some rest now, before the pre-dawn check of the lamp and the beginning of a new day's duties. Please give my fondest regards and respect to your good husband, Michael, and a special kiss for young Jamie. Tell him the gulls here are still waiting for him to visit and share his breadcrumbs, though I must confess, Alara, I fear they'd be rather too bold and greedy for his gentle liking. They're not shy creatures, these feathered pirates of the point. Do not worry for me, my dearest sister. I am, in my own particular way, content. This life, stark as it may seem to those accustomed to the comforts and companionship of the town, has a profound, elemental beauty, a deep and abiding simplicity that has come to suit my nature. And knowing that my letters, however infrequent, eventually reach you, and that yours, filled with news of home and family, will eventually reach me, makes the vast distance that separates our lives seem just a little less daunting, a little less absolute. I shall seal this letter now with a drop of wax, and place it carefully in the box with the others, ready for the stout Helen's next call. Until then, and always, I will keep you, Michael, and young Jamie, in my thoughts and in my nightly prayers. May your own lamp of happiness and health always burn bright and steady in your warm and loving home, with much enduring love and steadfast, unwavering affection. Your devoted brother, Ewan. And so Ewan's letter ends, a fragile paper bridge reaching out from his solitary stone tower by the relentless sea. His words, filled with the timeless rhythm of the waves and the steadfast, watchful glow of his lamp, remind us of the countless unseen lives, the quiet acts of dedication that have contributed to the safety and progress of our interconnected world. His daily concerns, his profound respect for nature's power, his deep connection to family despite the isolating miles, these are universal human experiences, their echoes reaching us clearly across the intervening years. The lighthouse keeper, often a romanticized symbol of vigilance and unwavering hope, stands in Ewan's letter as a testament to the profound impact one individual, through quiet duty and commitment, can have, even in the deepest isolation. As you prepare now for your own peaceful sleep, imagine that steady, sweeping beam of light from Ewan's tower, cutting bravely through the darkest night, a beacon of safety, guidance, and unwavering reassurance. Let the gentle, rolling rhythm of his words and the imagined sounds of his remote elemental world soothe your mind and calm your spirit. There is nothing more to do now but to rest, to allow the gentle tide of sleep to carry you to calm and peaceful shores. The letters from the past may be sealed and stored away, but their human echoes remain, whispering to us of endurance, of love, and of the quiet, essential light that each of us, in our own way, contend and share in our own corners of the world. Good night. May your dreams be peaceful, and may your own inner light shine steady and true.